Welcome to the beautiful city of Athens, the gateway to the Tennessee Valley, a city rooted in deep community relationships and built on a rich tradition of small local business and the very best of the human spirit. As Athens embraces the future, the signs of progress are in full bloom. Join us as we discover the bright spots in this charming southern city that we call home. This is Hometown Heartbeat, Athens. What's going on, everybody? It is Hometown Heartbeat, episode 43. What was that, Connor? I couldn't hear you.
44.
44.
Okay.
We have a very special guest with us today. He's going to lead the show with a joke. I'm kidding. If you listen to Dale's show this morning, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, you should.
Don't get me in trouble with my wife.
No, I'm not going to. Dale Jackson, everybody. No introduction necessary for most of you. Dale Jackson is the host of the Dale Jackson Show on WVNN and has guerrilla...
Alabama politics this week.
Politics this week.
All over the place, all over the state of Alabama.
He's basically famous. And so this is our first celebrity interview. And so we're super excited about it. But no, we have been, as many of you know, we've been talking about trying to take this to the radio for a long time. So in order to do that, you got to find people that are in the radio and pick their brain. So that's what I've been doing today, trying to figure out how this whole thing works. And so we're looking at a lot of stuff right now that's going to be a lot of fun in the future, video, all kinds of crazy stuff to bring you more conservative Christian, constitutionally conservative. That's what I call myself, Dale.
Okay.
And people love that because it's like, it's kind of like being a Christian. If the Bible says it, I'm good with it. If the Constitution says it, I'm in on it.
And it's also very easy to understand what that means. People know what that means.
Well, nowadays, I mean, nothing means what it means. If you identify with anything, you can be that. It doesn't have to
just
be.
declare it.
No, name it and claim it, as many pastors across the country.
What are your pronouns? Just declare whatever they are.
Yeah. The PP test, is that what Rick and Bubba talked about it once? It's pretty easy. There's a test. It's real easy. You got an innie or an outie, right? No, but look, at the end of the day, we're super excited to be here. We're going to talk some politics. We're going to talk some radio. Dale's been on the radio he was just telling me he's been on for 45 years. I know he doesn't look that old, but
I look plenty old, but no, not that long. 14 or 15 years, roughly.
And so it's the majority of that here in North Alabama, all of it North Alabama. How did you get into this?
Well, I got into radio a long time ago when I was in college, actually. I started writing for a newspaper, and the editor said, "You're terrible at this." He said, "This is all opinion. You should not be doing this. You should go do our editorial page." I said, "That sounds really cool." So I went and wrote editorials, pissed a bunch of people off. And I decided at that point I didn't want to be a journalist anymore. I wanted to be a commentator. So I decided, how do I get into this commentary thing? And I said, I like talk radio, so let me try to do that as well. So I moved to the University of Florida, got into their telecom program. It's number 6 in the nation, or was at the time. Now that I've graduated there, it's probably like 15th or something, and dropping. But they cranked out Aaron Andrews, so we can say that. So I went there and I started working for WRUF in Gainesville.
Okay.
As a reporter.
Okay.
And they were like, "You suck at this. Stop doing this. You're bad. Didn't we already tell you this?" So I started working and then I went and worked at WSKY in Gainesville, which was a talk station down there. And I was just a producer, and I not just a producer because they're very important to talk radio, but I was a producer, and I did a lot of stuff there part-time. And then one day, a guy who did a weekend show quit to do something else, and I walked into the program director's office, and I said, Can I have that? And he said, "I don't care. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday night. Go do whatever you want to do." And so that's when I started doing that at 8 o'clock on Sunday night. Did that for about 4 months. Finally graduated from the University of Florida.
How many years? How many years did that take you?
3.
Oh, yeah, I was about to try to give him grief for it, but it sounds like I did 3 years, didn't even get a degree.
Well, I did 4 years in the Army.
Okay. Really? What was your MOS?
I was a 31 Fox.
I was 68 whiskey. Okay. So how about that?
Well, yeah, you listen. So I did all of that, and then I graduated, and right after I graduated, I got the job in Panama City. Did that for about a year and a half. 25. Working at a radio station, a talk radio station, but the stations down the hall were a top 40 station, a rock station. They had deals with Coyote Ugly and all these other places, so I had a great time living there. I was single. It was a great time. Everything was awesome. About a year and a half, I got the call to go to Birmingham. Went to Birmingham, worked there for about 4 months, got fired, and then a couple weeks later, months later, I got a job here, and the first time I ever did a talk show by myself, Monday through Friday. And I've been doing that for about 13 years.
Yeah,
on WVNN.
That's something that I'm wildly uncomfortable with. I try to get podcast guests on here, and again, I'm not on the radio by any stretch. You have to go find us or download us or whatever. But doing it by yourself is always. I mean, it's like. I mean, I could talk to this wall for 45 minutes and it wouldn't be a big deal, but it's intimidating because it's only you, your thoughts, your opinion, your wisdom, your smart. There's no interaction. It's hard.
And for a while, I've got a great team now, and I'm not saying all the people I had in the past were not that great, but there were periods of that time where I was by myself, where I was literally a one-man band. I produced the show, I ran the show, I answered the phone calls, I did all those things all at the same time. So I did it all. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm able to talk when there's like 20 people in the room or no one in the room, because I did that for a while. I showed I could do it. One of my producers was sick one day, and I showed I could do it. So the next round of budget cuts came. They're like, oh, Dale can do this by himself. Well, let's see him do it by himself. And then after a while of that, I was like, okay, that's enough of that. Give me some help. And now I got a great team.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah. And that's one way to put it.
And look, businesses will cut costs. Well, not all businesses, but large businesses, corporate businesses will cut costs wherever necessary if they think they can. I forgot. I'm so excited for our guest here today, Connor. We need to check in with Connor. We do this every day. Connor, how are you, buddy?
Doing
Sorry,
good.
you are important. I promise.
Yeah, that's what he says.
Well, Dale, that's more words than we normally get. Connor, are our B and C shots working today? Are we switching cameras at all today? Okay, yes. Cool. I was just curious. All right, so something you said there that caught my attention.
So I said I had good producers, so you're going to start razzing yours? Is that
no, that's every day. That's every day. Right. No, Connor is. I was doing this by myself. 2 years ago, I'd never done a live stream ever in my life. I'm talking about I hadn't even flipped an iPhone over and like gone live. And my business partner at the time was like, man, we could build this brand. Like, so I started this real estate company that did things very different. We did flat rate listings. In fact, we advertised with one Dale Jackson for a time, but we did flat rate listings. It was very different. It was very unique. And they were like, build the brand online, content. Start making, I would drive around in my truck and I would just rant about anything real estate related, about bad real estate agents, about whatever. By the way, didn't make many friends doing it, but we sold $47 million worth of houses and we built the whole brand online. And so that kind of spurred this, and my personality is one that look, I've got the personality of an addict. When I buy equipment, I buy lots of it, I buy the best there is, and I figure out how to make it work. And so we ended up with this huge amount of high quality equipment. I'm producing my own live show, and out of nowhere Connor walks into my life, and it was like I don't know what's that movie with Dirty Dancing, and he came running at me and he jumped and I caught him and I held him up and we spun around and the rest is history. But I give him a hard time all the time. So back to what you said. Something you said there caught my mind. You said I was a journalist, or I was journalism, or I was in the process of executing journalism.
I wanted to be a journalist.
But hear this, folks. He said I was giving my opinion. Yep. I was giving my 2 cents on everything.
I was bad at it.
And they said, but no, that's my point. That doesn't make you bad at journalism anymore. That makes you a freaking great journalist, because journalism today, as we know it, I remember the days when the news guys would just get on and read the news.
Yeah,
they would read it.
Now.
It is everything is an opinion. Everything, like, there is a forum for that, as you just very clearly illustrated for everyone listening and watching. If you're on the podcast, your live stream, YouTube, whatever, like, when you read the quote unquote news, you have a responsibility as an American citizen, as someone who's going to vote in a freaking election and decide a president. You have a responsibility to figure out, is your news real or is it not news at all and actually opinion? Neither are wrong. Don't hear me say this the wrong way. Like, they're both necessary and they both have their place in politics, in life, in all of the above. But those that try to pass off their opinion as news, I have a huge problem with that, Dale. I have a huge problem with it.
Well, part of the issue is, and I'll use a couple of examples. I'll look at Sean Hannity and I'll look at Chris Cuomo. Sean Hannity on Fox News. No, I'm serious. Just let's hear me out.
Okay.
Sean Hannity on Fox News and Chris Cuomo on CNN do the exact same thing. Only one of them is a conservative and the other pretends not to be a liberal. That's basically it. And what happens is, if you ask Chris Cuomo what he does, he would say, I'm a journalist. If you asked Sean Hannity what he does, he would say, I'm a commentator. And that is the difference. One is pretending, and the other is owning what he is. And if he's going to own what he is, I'm fine with that. If you're going to pretend to be one thing and actually be another, then that's where the people have the problem. That's why when people are standing up at the White House press briefings and getting into fights
Why
with the
are you
president.
asking me that? Why are you asking me that? Is it because I'm Asian? No, it's because it was a dumb freaking question. That's why.
So all these things happen, and you just have to look and see who these people actually are and who's being honest about what they're saying and what they actually believe.
I've told people this my entire life, and today I've been validated by my local celebrity. But, like, I know that I'm a jerk. And I've accepted that. And I've come to terms with my personality. And self-awareness is the key to life. Honestly, it's the key to life. Because everybody knows that guy that doesn't know he's that guy. And you, if you're right now saying, I don't know that guy, it's because you are that guy. And if you want to fix that, like, call us, comment, like, let us know. Their therapy sessions are available. We can even schedule an intervention with your family. Like, we can make sure you're aware of who you really are if you want to know. But the reality is most people don't want to know because they like to pass themselves off, just like you said. And honestly, I laughed at you when you started, but that's the clearest explanation of that I've heard in a long time, because the reality is, journalism does not exist. Mm-hmm. Everything has become opinion. I find there's some really great websites where you can go and gauge the bias of a news media site. Even those are biased. Like you can't, you cannot find. Is there anything in your life, any resource available to us as Americans that you would call unbiased is not an option? We're going to take that off the table. But less biased or moderately, barely biased or even acceptably biased.
Man, if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, maybe I'd have an answer for you. But to be honest with you, when you read stuff, you can tell the bias of the reporters. And I think that's a big problem right now. And you know, the stuff that I would say that I read and that I enjoy, I would say I like to read the articles on Fox News. I like to read the articles on CNN. But even those now have become so ridiculous and so biased that I don't think there is an unbiased source. So at this point, what you got to do is you just need to consume a bunch, and a lot of people don't have that time. They just consume headlines or Twitter links and stuff like that instead of actually consuming what's in the article. And because they don't do that, they're missing out big time. So consume a lot of different sources, and then you'll get a better picture of what's actually going on. And you'll also see where the author is coming from in those opinions.
Hey, are you listening? Because I've been trumpeting this from the beginning. Again, coronavirus, terrible thing. Not going to take away from what it is, the disease and all that. So we're not going to dive into that today. Although we could, and I bet we'd have a blast. That forum will hopefully come soon. But as American people, I've watched my generation. Unfortunately, Dale, I'm a millennial. Okay, I'm 33.
It's unfortunate for you.
It is, and I literally, it's kind of like most white people, like they spend time hating the fact that they were cursed with that.
So self-hating millennial.
That's right, self-hating millennial.
That might be a brand.
It could be.
It might be a brand.
Hold on, selfhatingmillennial.com. Is it available? But no, and so like the reality is that I've been saying since this whole thing started with the virus, with the stats, with this, like go and find out, is what you're consuming real? Like when the CDC comes out and they have to adjust the death toll by 30,000 people because it was misreported. Mm-hmm. What happened was it was skewed intentionally, and then somebody smart enough to guess what? Not all doctors are liberals, and so all of a sudden doctors start speaking up. They start saying, "Wait a minute, hey, we're getting pressure. They died of they were bit by a shark. They had an airplane crash. There was a congestive heart failure. But did they have COVID-19? They did. Must have been a CV-19 death.
It was a COVID-19 related gunshot wound. No, I mean that's just what it was. So and so, look, I think a lot of the projection stuff that we've seen and we've talked about a lot, the IMHE and all these other places. I think what's important to realize when we talk about these things is that the data coming in skewed the original numbers. And we didn't actually get good numbers from where it all started, China, et cetera. And we didn't get the right numbers. So it skewed everything. And then when we started getting more numbers, they started feeding that in. So where are they feeding numbers in from? New York City, where they were having a huge thing. So you had this giant 2.2 million. You had news sources in Alabama saying 25,000 people in Alabama were going to die. And it was never going to happen. Everyone knew this was never going to happen.
But did they? I'm not to interrupt, but did they know that?
They had to know. They were going out and saying...
You give humanity far too much credit.
They were saying 60% of Alabamians... AL.com had an article that said 60% of Alabamians would get COVID-19. And then they went through and talked about how many would be hospitalized and how many would die. And the number they came up with at the end was 25,000 would die. And I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. And because they did that, they scared everybody. And I'm not anti-shutdown. I was, I took a lot of heat from my listeners on this because I did this. I believe that we should have probably shut down for a little bit just to see what was going on and get a grip on this. I thought that was the case, and people jump me all the time. I was very critical of the governor for this, and for not doing not shutting it down soon enough. I mean, that was just me. That's how I felt. I feel like I've been vindicated by that because we did slow the curve as we wanted to do. And I also thought that because the rest of the country and the world had done this, it didn't matter what Alabama did. We weren't going to save our economy because of this. We were going to be swept up in the tidal wave like everyone else, and that's just the way it was going to be. So
interstate commerce is a heck of a thing.
Right. I mean, and at this point, we just had to lean into it and say, let's get in there and get it over as soon as possible and get back where we need to go. So what happens? We get in there, we do it, we get it over with as soon as possible. And the other day, and this is maybe a little in the weeds here, Alabama passed 2 budgets yesterday. And the budgets, basically, one was the biggest education budget the state has ever passed. And this is talking about what could happen in the future. So this is with all this other stuff happening, tax revenue and all these other things. And the other was a general fund budget that was basically level funded. And what those things mean is that Alabama is not in a situation where the sky is falling and we need a federal government bailout and you need all these things to make this stuff happen. Now, there's $1.8 billion in CARES funding that's going to go towards paying for a bunch of stuff that happened with COVID-19 in the state, and that's exactly what should happen. But my point is this. There are states begging for bailouts right now because they're spending so out of control. They've shut it down so much that they haven't been able to collect any of that tax revenue. Look at Florida. Tourism, dead. California, tourism, dead. And you have all these things. Alabama's weathered this pretty well. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination. There are still hot spots all over the state, but there are good signs. There'll be free tests in Thursday in Athens. In Huntsville Hospital, they're like, we'll test anybody who wants one. You don't even have symptoms. Just come on out because they don't have enough tests. 10,000 more tests than needed in New York. The point is, we're moving definitely in the right direction. We still got to wash our hands and socially distance. We didn't shake hands today. I mean, that's just the reality, but then we talked at each other for 20 minutes now. The point is this. We fared pretty well here. If this is the end of this, we've done very well. Now, could there be a relapse? Absolutely. Hope it doesn't happen. But in the first round of this, we fared pretty good.
Well, I mean, that's when you drop the mic and walk off. No, that's exactly like I was probably not where you were on. I mean, so this podcast started literally. This is, what did we say? 42. Like, we started this as a response to the coronavirus. Like, people are ready to consume content. Like, let's give them something to talk about. We promised to be uplifting and all these things that were impossible to fulfill in the midst of a pandemic. But I would probably say I fell on the other side. Like, I was not trumpeting shut the state down. Kay. And when she did, I made fun of her and put a picture up of her and Austin Powers and that little, and it was, I said, we're going to join in progress down in, and there was Austin Powers there. But no, like you said, I think you're spot on there in that, like, we didn't know what we were facing. And so anyone who says anything about the way we handled it at the beginning is an idiot. If you don't like that, I'm sorry. Jesus loves you. I'm trying. You're an idiot. But the response now is where we are starting to be able to pass judgment on our leaders.
We know.
Bingo. And that's the key. And the whole point of what I was saying prior to that was, again, everything that you consume, you have to be willing to do one of two things. One of them is much harder than the other, and that's approach this with common sense. But the other is to find, I mean, just go back to the grade school when you had to write a paper and you had to find multiple sources saying the same thing. You had to find, and I realize that's easy. You could go to CNN, CNBC, you could hit and you could find the same, but go, like he said, read oppositional. Like, I read Business Insider, which unfortunately I loved that publication before it became the most liberal thing I read, which again, not a problem. I don't have any problem with reading liberal or left. I am a constitutional conservative, and guess what? I don't hate liberals. What? Is that possible, Dale?
I think it is possible, but there's also something else I think on the other side, and this has just been something that I'm a person who loves to hate things, and including people that I agree with. And what I mean by that is you have to be able to look at people and say, okay, I agree with 90% of what this guy says, but man, this was a really stupid thing to do and a very stupid thing to say. And you need to be able to look at that person or talk about that person and say, this person said a really stupid thing and they're wrong for saying it. Now, there's a lot of people who say, well, I'm never going to vote for that guy because he's wrong on this, this, and this. Well, people are wrong about stuff all the time. And then you also need to be able to look at people sometimes and say, I don't like that person, but they're right about that. You have to be able to do it. All too often we say, okay, I've divided my people into groups, and I will never agree with anyone from this group, and I will never agree with anyone from this group, and I will never agree with anyone from this group. And that's how you get in situations where we find ourselves, even with our entertainment now watch a late night show. In the late night shows, I'm just serious, just watch
No, it's awful.
Well, basically, it's basically this. Hey, you know that politician you don't like? Yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter what the blah, blah, blah was.
That's exactly right.
You're laugh because you're dogging on that one person. And it makes it unwatchable for almost anyone else who isn't already there. And my point is this. Liberals are funny. Conservatives are funny. Liberals have a hard time taking a joke every now and then. It appears more so with conservatives, but they get butthurt about stuff too. And I just think you got to be able to laugh at yourself. You got to be able to laugh at the people who disagree with you. You have to be able to say, okay, that's pretty funny. You put a meme on Facebook that shows Donald Trump taking a mask off and it's got orange stuff on it. That's funny. I like Donald Trump. I voted for him. I'll vote for him again. Yeah. But I can acknowledge that is hilarious. Okay?
No, the worst thing that ever happened to comedy and humor was political correctness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible. Except for Dave Chappelle. I don't know if you've watched that.
Well, so he's getting killed too. He's getting killed too. But
he doesn't care.
No, and that's the whole thing about him. He doesn't care. You can't hurt a guy who doesn't care. And by the way, that's the Donald Trump. That's the Donald Trump model right there. He doesn't care. He came out and would say things. They'd be like, "You shouldn't have said that," and he goes, "Oh well, it's true." When normally most people go, "Well, you're right. I shouldn't have said such a thing." And that right there is, I think Dave Chappelle kind of tapped into that same thing.
Oh,
and that's why people are mad. Look, Dave Chappelle makes a bunch of jokes about transsexuals and stuff like this and all these other things. And people say, well, no, that's just not funny. And it's like, well, wait, why is it not funny? Well, because it could hurt people's feelings. Well, that's not the judgment of whether or not this is funny or not.
That's right.
It's funny.
Humor can be humor.
Right. It's funny if it's funny. It doesn't matter if it hurts somebody's feelings. People who make jokes that hurt your feelings all the time, they're still funny jokes.
Let me relate this to most of you watching this has gone right over your head because you're probably offended. Tiger Woods. I'm going to go to Tiger Woods and hang with me. I'll bring it all the way back. When Tiger Woods did what Tiger Woods did, and I'll never forget. Tiger Woods, my favorite, probably one of my favorite athletes of all time. Definitely my favorite golfer of all time. And I think the best. I watched his wife chase him with a golf club and smash his window on that Cadillac Escalade in Florida. And I was like, well, I guess that's the end of Tiger. And for years it's been, or Michael Vick would be the exact same comparison. It's been Tiger's a bad person. I can't cheer for him. Tiger cheated on his wife. Whatever, fill in the blank. Michael Vick dog fought. He fought some dogs and I can't I like Tiger Woods. I like the way he hits a golf ball. I like what Michael Vick did on a football field. Humor is humor. Funny is funny. And you can allow those things to be taken, and context is everything. I get that. But put them in context. Context of humor is what makes things funny. Saying something that's almost completely accurate, but just a hair shy, or maybe it's exaggerated a little bit or whatever. That makes things funny.
Yeah, your sports analogy I think goes almost far enough, because I think the bigger point on that would be when Michael Vick was playing for Atlanta, people in Philadelphia hated him. But the minute Michael Vick went to Philadelphia, all of a sudden, well, maybe we can look the other way on the dog stuff. And I think I think politics. Exactly right. I think politics are kind of like that, and they find ways to be upset about things that if the other side did it. And I know we talked about this off the air, but on my show today, I was making a point of making fun of fat politicians.
So I was going to bring that up. Sean Hollis, one of my good buddies and a commenter on the show, he must have listened this morning because he said, "How about Pelosi calling Trump obese?" So continue what you're saying now. I mean,
so Trump is obese. There's no question about that. So Nancy Pelosi finds out he's taking hydroxychloroquine, and who knows what the point of that is. But I don't think he should probably be taking it based on what we know, but I don't think we know everything we need to know. That aside, she refers to him as morbidly obese.
Yes.
Now, you can say what you want, whether she was joking or being serious or just answering a question or whatever, but it doesn't matter, because she then got this, I call it the Slay Queen treatment. Anytime Nancy Pelosi says anything, the media says, Slay Queen, and you got to go out and talk about how great it is, that thing she said, how she got under his skin and she burned him and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And I'm just telling you, had Donald Trump answered a question about Stacey Abrams, and Stacey Abrams being the candidate who lost the governorship in Georgia, now she's supposed to be the vice presidential nominee, even though she has absolutely no qualifications. I'm more qualified to be vice president than she is, which is...
Would you run with Biden? Just out of curiosity.
I would, because he's probably going to die, and then I'll be the president of the United States. But the point is, nobody would say anything like, hey, is she going to run against you? I'll give you the perfect example. I wish I would have brought this up on my show, but I didn't. What if someone said to Trump and said, okay, so Biden has chosen Stacey Abrams to run as his vice president. And then Trump says, I don't think Stacey Abrams has run anywhere in a long time. Like something along those lines. Like if you were to say that, if you were to say, it's funny.
It is. It's good.
It's rude. Whatever.
It hurt my feelings.
It hurt your feelings.
I'm a millennial, remember?
Yeah, you are. So, everyone will be mad at him. It doesn't mean that it's not funny. All it means is that Stacey Abrams isn't allowed to be made fun of. And that fat people aren't allowed to be fun of. But then how in the world can you say, you got him? When she says something about Trump, and she knows what she's doing when she refers to him as morbidly obese, is it getting under his skin? Absolutely. Trump is the pettiest human being in the world. Of course it's going to get underneath his skin. No question about it. But for them to pretend that they are okay with that, but wouldn't be okay with me referencing Stacey Abrams falling asleep on a beach and Greenpeace coming out and rolling her into the sea, they would be upset by that if somebody were to say such a thing.
Connor, are you you're timestamping this, right? Okay, just want to make sure.
Not that I would ever say such a thing, but if someone were to say such a thing, that's another Donald Trump trick. You just say whatever you want and then say, I would never say this, but someone might say. They would be furious about that. And that is the point of this. And I think that it's okay to look at a picture of Stacey Abrams that they put in the Washington Post where she is literally blotting out a light and it looks like she's a solar eclipse. It's okay to point that out and say that.
I can't breathe.
But you can say that stuff and it be okay. And unfortunately, our society says, well, she's a Democrat. She's a woman. She's a minority. That's like all sorts of special classes. And she was screwed out of an election in Georgia, so therefore you can't make fun of her. Donald Trump
was she screwed out of an election?
So she believes.
Okay.
She currently thinks she's the governor of
and
Georgia,
UCF
right?
thought they won a national championship,
Right,
but they never played the game, so that's neither here nor there.
But Donald Trump can be made fun of because he doesn't have any of those protected classes. He's a straight white male wealthy elected official, so he's not protected at all, which I think is fine.
That's the endangered species list. What you just laid out there.
Listen,
by the way.
It's been 41 years as a straight white male, and boy, oh boy, is it rough. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that is the case. You know, people understand the real world, and my biggest problem with a lot of people is they take positions we know they don't believe, and they act offended by things they know they're not offended by. If you're trying to tell me that Joe Biden and his friends never got together and made a bunch of crass jokes, you're lying to me. But then he'll go out and stand in front of somebody and pretend that he's offended by a flippant comment somewhere. I don't buy it. And that's why I'm glad Joe Biden's having to deal with the stuff he's having to deal with right now. Do I believe Tara Reid when she says Joe Biden forced her against a wall in a Senate hallway that has hundreds of people walking through it every day? Absolutely not. I don't believe it for a second. And I think it's ridiculous. But Joe Biden created that world. Mm-hmm. So he has to live in it.
Oh, the left-on-left crime, that's my favorite thing to watch. Like, in all of the world, the one thing I really love is the left-on-left crime. When you have, like, a leftist ideal or tenant that is so fundamentally profound to their movement, because none of it is real, none of it's policy, it's a movement. It's activism is all it is. And all of a sudden, you, in the middle of that activism, now all of a sudden there's another lefty activist's activism principle that jumps right in the middle of it. And then what do they do? What do they do?
They fight it out, but that's called intersectionalism.
Intersection.
That's what they call when you take
folks, when I started this show today, I did not expect to have my vocabulary expanded by like a 17-syllable word. It's just happened.
Intersectionalism is when you have all these different things diverging.
This is a family show. Be careful.
Okay, I'm just telling you, it's all these things diverging into the same issue. Like you have economic issues, but do you have economic issues that affect black women? That's intersectional.
Okay.
So that's usually...
He did go to college, by the way. I did not graduate. He did. There's the difference, folks.
1.7 GPA in high school, kids. I'll tell you that much. Join the Army, and then you can do whatever you want.
Listen, it is 3:35. We've been on the air for 30 minutes. We've got other stuff we're going to go handle today. Dale, this has been awesome. I'm just saying, I mean, I'm not, I'm no smart man, but I'm pretty good at lobbing these softballs up. We should probably do this again, at some point, because this has been fun.
Yep.
Guys, as always, you know where to find us. You can get us on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google, whatever, wherever, literally anywhere. Just Google Hometown Heartbeat with Zach Walker, and I promise you I will maximize the name Dale Jackson in the search results for this podcast, because that's what I do really well. In the meantime, we will see you guys tomorrow. We love you, and Dale, as always, been a pleasure. Connor, thank you so much, my friend.
Absolutely.
Did you take that test yet?
It'll be June 3rd.
You already told me that. Connor took a big national test and got all the way to the end of the test and went to submit, and there was an error in the computer, and he has to retake the whole thing all over again.
Terrible.
All right, guys, listen, it's been fun. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Big ups, and stay classy, San Diego, I guess. Love you guys.